but we're going to discuss what's happening in the transfer portal coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Thanks for helping us get to 10,000 subscribers here on Locked On Sooners. Now we're on to 20K. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay, there's been a lot happening in the transfer portal. A couple of Oklahoma wide receiver targets that they were connected to, and one that they were kind of connected to didn't go Oklahoma's way. That's Donovan McCulley, the Indiana transfer wide receiver who committed to Michigan, and Reggie Virgil, who, again, connected to Jaden Gibson, childhood friend, was thought to be a heavy Oklahoma possibility, ends up going to Texas Tech, and then Chase Sowell, who is cousins with Torrey Blaylock, the 4-star running back signee from the 2025 class, ends up going to Iowa State. Now, so that's kind of where Oklahoma's at right now in the wide receiver market. They're still pursuing guys at wide receiver. Jerron Bradley from formerly of Texas Tech, then Boston College, again connected to Emmett Jones. So that's where they're at. Any of this surprising to you, Jay?
No, not really. I'll say this. Until they actually step on campus and go to a class, they are not truly committed. I'll give you an example. Dylan Gabriel. He committed to UCLA. He is committed to them all through December. His January classes rolled around. Jeff Lebby, we found out the final answer from Caleb Williams. He picked up the phone and called and said, hey, I'd love for you to be the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel was probably like, I would love to be the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. We go ahead and unenroll and head on to Norman. And boom, the rest was history. So until they actually show up to class, it don't matter. So I say that to say this. As we go through the portal conversations and recruitment, if there's someone that we really want and someone decides to snatch them up and we come back and reapproach them after right before the portal window truly closes and we say, hey, interested? It's a good chance they may go ahead and say, I may re-enter the portal and end up in Oklahoma. It's the game. The game's the game. Unfortunately, everybody plays it that way. And I could see us doing it. We did it before. We did it all when BV first got here. So I could see us doing that again. So I'd keep my eyes open on that portion of it. And I wouldn't really be too stressed because until, like I said, they actually end up in class, they're not. And I know Brent Venables and them with Emmett Jones, they have a strategy. They're looking at certain players. And you mentioned Duran, he was one that was a fascinating one, John. We were looking at him when he hit the portal from Tech because Emmett Jones coached him there. And as soon as he got here, but you ran into a problem. You already had like 4 dudes that you thought were ready to play. Mm-hmm. So you bring in this 6'5", 220-pounder, he's going to be behind probably Jade Gibson. He's going to be behind Andrew Anthony, Jalil Farouk, Nick Anderson, and Deion Burks. That's 5 dudes that he's going to have to fight with to get that position with, plus all of the young players you brought in. You still had Jaquez Petaway and all the young guys you brought in your recent class. That's an extremely full room. And so the chance of playing was going to be slim unless he actually came. If we had actually came, he'd been the star wide receiver at that point because we had nobody else playing. But it made sense for him to go to Boston College and look for an opportunity to play. That didn't work out for him. And now Emmett Jones has rekindled that flame. It's like, hey, I actually don't have wide receivers now, and there's a spot open. Would you like to come down here, check us out, and let's have a conversation? I sense that that's one. If there's one I think will land, I think he is one.
Yeah, they're also pursuing Isaiah Hunter, the Cal wide receiver prospect who was a redshirt freshman, had a really nice season for them with over 600 yards, 40 receptions, 5 or 6 touchdowns. So there are options out there. If anything, there are going to be an abundance of wide receivers in the portal market. You're seeing it at the NFL level too, where teams are able to find really good wide receivers 3rd, 4th round now because it's the deepest position pretty much every single draft class. If you follow the NFL draft stuff every year, like I used to when I covered the Dallas Cowboys, that was the buzz every single year from 2016 through 2020, in the 2021 NFL draft, that was my last NFL draft coverage year. It was wide receivers deep. That's what you always heard. And that's the case in college football too. College football is deep with wide receivers. The one thing that I guess I am slightly encouraged by is if you get a commitment from a dude, you're probably going to get that guy, because there's not going to be a lot of jobs for him to be like, to bounce out middle of January and then decide to go somewhere else, because those roster spots are going to be full. Teams are going to have their 105 or maybe more, and then have to figure out a way to cut down even further. So they're not going to necessarily be in a position to add a bunch more talent. So that's kind of where Oklahoma's at in the wide receiver stuff. Jay, any surprise at Jackson Arnold going to Auburn?
Oh, not at all. It makes sense. I think the bigger shocker to me is the fact that Mississippi State losing Michael Van Buren to LSU and then not landing Jackson Arnold. I figured Lebby would have landed him because, I mean, that one made a lot of sense to people. But I had said before, I didn't think that Jackson Arnold had that much alliance just to Jeff Lebby. I know that he really wanted to be quarterback at Oklahoma, but I didn't think his alliance to Jeff Lebby was really that big. Looking at that now, him going to Auburn and Hugh Freeze, who does run an RPO type system where his quarterback does run a lot. Look at Peyton Thorne last season. There's an opportunity for Jackson Arnold to flourish. The question is going to be, will he throw the ball? And it's one thing I like to point out to a lot of people. I've had someone even mention, I think that Jackson Arnold has a chance of getting 3,000 yards passing in the season. And I smiled and I said, you know that Auburn has only had one 3,000-yard passer since 2000. And that was in 2017 by Jarrett Stidham. They don't throw for 3,000 yards at Auburn. Cam Newton, who even ran for like almost 1,500 yards rushing, he didn't throw for 3,000 yards. It just doesn't happen there. For some reason, something about that place, they just don't do it. So to me, it's keep your eyes open. Not sure, but it made sense for him to go there. What did you think about that move?
I was like you. I thought Jeff Lebby kind of mismanaged the situation by allowing Mississippi State to be so heavily connected early on in the portal situation, and then losing Michael Van Buren just a few days later. It's a bummer. I mean, that must hurt, because you had a promising young quarterback in Michael Van Buren that you could have continued to build around. And then the Jackson Arnold situation. Now, who knows exactly how that all went down, if Van Buren was actually going to go to the portal anyway. But I think actually it's a smart move for Arnold to not go to Mississippi State and to go to Auburn, because you're going to be in a better offense. You're going to have better talent around you. You're going to have a better defense on the other side of the ball than you would have had at Mississippi State. Will it be good next year? We'll see. Will he be able to avoid the turnovers next year? We'll see. Peyton Thorne was very turnover prone, and that's what killed them in games too for the Auburn Tigers. So you go from one quarterback that had struggles with turnovers to another quarterback that had struggles with turnovers. Hopefully Jackson Arnold's able to get some of that under wraps. Was there anything else from the weekend in the transfer portal that kind of sparked your interest, or that you heard about somebody that Oklahoma might be targeting?
Hunter hasn't shown that he's actually going to make the visit to Oklahoma yet. And honestly, the microscope right now is on wide receiver recruiting and portal shopping, I guess you could say. Because to me, shopping in the transfer portal is your retail prices. Your high school guys are your wholesale prices. So that you always get them at better. You're getting them more raw, and you're trying to see what they're going to be. Isaiah Hunter not really pointing out that he's coming to visit Oklahoma had me slightly concerned, but kind of like we talked about in the other segment, that John, right now, we don't know if the best wide receivers are in the portal yet. Mm-hmm. A lot of the wide receivers in the country are going through their negotiations and conversations. Schools are trying to figure out their budgets as they look to front load stuff as we prepare for revenue share. So we don't know who people actually want and who people are really going to go after. So we'll kind of see. I think Hunter, though, not saying, when he's going to visit Oklahoma was a little bit of a concern, but he's also a redshirt freshman. I think we probably want to go for some more veteran type players, specifically because we've got the young guys on the roster that we may actually want to get ramped up quickly so they can play here the next 3 years.
A lot still to come down the pipeline in the transfer portal market. Hopefully we get some news over the next few days at the quarterback position, because I do believe that once that domino falls, once we have an understanding what the quarterback's going to look like for 2025 and maybe even 2026, that'll, I think, give everybody a little bit more peace of mind as Oklahoma moves through portal season. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube as well. Follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as well. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer.
Sooner.